Hey everyone, welcome to Rapid Reviews. So today we're going to talk about the very first episode of HBO's seemingly massive hit series, The Last of Us. So just a warning of spoilers throughout. So if you haven't seen the episode, definitely pause this and come back when you've watched it, unless you just don't care about spoilers. Uh, but I would probably wait because there's some pretty big events in this one that you don't want to miss if you're not aware of what's going to happen. So The Last of Us is based on a hit video game from 2013. To give you a little background, for me, I played some of it, but more watched my stepson play it. And while I don't remember a lot of the smaller details, I do remember the major plot points, and I do remember it being a great story. And so when I heard that it was going to be adapted, I thought that it's perfect. You know, it's a really good story, something that would work for TV, especially in this day and age. And then when they announced the leads, which Bella Ramsey and Pedro Pascal, I thought, okay, even better. Like they to me were perfectly cast, and I was really excited to see them. They were to me the two of the best pound for pound actors in Game of Thrones. So I thought, okay, this is good. Great story, good leads. I'm excited to see where this goes. And I think this first episode was great. um, Pilots are always tough, especially when you have an established property, one that's so as beloved as The Last of Us. It's challenging because you're serving a lot of different masters. In that case, you've got the built-in audience that have played the game and loved the game and expect it to do right by the story and by the game. But then you have a new audience that you have to bring in and tell a story that is engaging for them and that works for them. But then you also have to, you have to set the world and set the stage and do all this while also telling an interesting, cohesive story that's going to keep people watching afterwards. So there's a lot of things to do, and then on top of that, even with passing knowledge of the story, I think everyone watching this that has any knowledge of it is going to know the major story beats in this episode. So again, you have to tell something that does right by the new audience, does right by the old audience, and at the same time, be make it work for people who kind of know what's going to happen. And again, I think they did a fantastic job with this episode. First and foremost, I think they're great performances. I think Pedro Pascal, he's got a little bit of a weird accent, like I'm not quite sure if it's a Southern accent or what he's going for. But besides that, I think he's great. I think he portrays a lot of that, grief and sadness that you would expect, given his situation, having lost his daughter, and really, I think in his mind, has probably failed his daughter. You have Bella Ramsey as Ellie, who is just as kind of sassy as she was in Game of Thrones, and is really good. I think as soon as she's in, I think I know people that were skeptical of her in the role, and I think within a minute of her on screen, I think those concerns were allayed for most people because I think she's great. But I think the standout, and almost sad that we're not going to get any more, is Nico Parker as Sarah. I think she was phenomenal, and I think that was necessary for this episode to work. But I think she was just great. As a good friend of mine said, she was like the daughter that you want to have. It kind of reminds me of my stepdaughter in how genuine and sweet and nice that and kind that she was. And I think the story really hinges on her death, and I think that that was an important thing that anybody that knows the story, that first scene when Sarah dies, has to be done right. If that scene isn't done right, I don't know that the story works because everything moving forward hinges on that moment. And I think they nailed it. So a lot of that was shot for shot from the game. So I think you can watch, if you just search, and you can see shot for shot a lot of that was from the game. But I think what works is by spending the first 15 or so minutes, from her point of view, and just watching how genuine and kind and good of a person she is, even knowing that she was going to die, it was a gut punch. It hurt. And so when that happens, both her performance and Pedro Pascal's performance and just everything that we had building up to it, for even for 20 minutes, she was my favorite character, and it hurt to lose her. So I think that scene works really well, and then sets the stage, I think, for the rest of the show moving forward. And it's mirrored by an amazing scene at the end, which is basically the same setup. They're confronted by a soldier. The soldier looks ready to shoot, And we have this character in Joel who I think is grief stricken by the failure and failing to protect and save his daughter. And we see that flash, and he flashes into this desperate rage where he pummels the soldier and saves Ellie's life. And I think that scene was done brilliantly, and again it was set up great by the earlier scene, and so it pays off really well here. And I think even knowing that these were the story beats that were going to happen, it just works so well because of the performances and how everything was set up. So I loved it. I thought it was really, really well done. And a couple other things I really liked about the show is, we've gotten a lot of post-apocalyptic movies and shows. We've gotten a lot of zombie movies and shows, and I think it felt different to some extent. I think we got something that felt a lot more. It was, we didn't have to deal with all the aftermath. We didn't have to deal with all the what does society do when it's collapsing. Like we've seen that a million times. So I like that we get that 20-year break, and this is what society is, and they're trying to figure it out. So I like that. On the flip side, though, I did like that in the initial stages when things are chaotic. I did love that scene of them driving, trying to figure out escape, because it felt real. It felt like it was chaos. They had no idea what they were doing. They were blocked off at every space. I think a lot of it was done in a single shot. Again, it was something that mirrored what was done in the video game, and you can watch videos showing that. And it really captured the tension and the chaos and just that frantic, just how frantic and fearful of a moment that would be if you're in that situation. So I really liked how they did that, but then they just stopped it, and we don't need to deal with them reorganizing society. We're just in a world that feels real and feels like, okay, here's what society is going to be like 20 years after a zombie apocalypse, which is not great. And I like that there wasn't a focus on the zombies or monsters or whatever they're called. I'm sure that will happen. I'm sure we're going to get them. I'm sure they're going to be weird and scary, but we didn't need that. I think it was more important to set up the story, and then we can deal with all that down the road. So I think they really made a good choice in doing that for this episode. And then I guess the standout scene for me, actually, so I've gone on a lot about the two scenes that mirrored each other, but I love the scene with Sarah in getting the watch fixed. I really like that because I think initially we're not sure, why did she take the watch and money? Is she just stealing? Does she, what's going on here? And it turns out, no, it was the sweetest thing. She was just trying to get his watch fixed, which he would never do on his own, and to give it to him on his birthday. And I think it really showed how much she cares for him and just how good of a person she is. And again, that's what makes everything work, is that we care enough for this character who was only on the screen for 10-15 minutes, but we now really feel for her and feel for him and are bought into the story. um so overall for me, I give it a 9. I could probably go higher given all the things that this episode needed to do, but I'm hopeful that we're going to get some great stuff. So I don't want to give it too high of a mark and then be stuck not being able to give higher marks as the show goes on. So for more detailed thoughts, you can check me out on the Cynic Radio podcast or the Bring the Popcorn podcast, where I talk a little bit more in depth on my thoughts on the episode. But I loved it. Give it a 9. If you haven't already, please like, subscribe this on whatever you're listening to, and I will be back next week as we get into episode 2.